Renato went to the china shop. For some reason, the owner was always nervous. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best. There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? And this is why heroes are called dashing, Bernardo thought. See? Dashing? Get it? He was sort of yanking his own shape, wasn't he? Nice. That could be useful. I think this is yours, said Bernardo. He couldn't hear his enemy's answer. Bernardo checked for a false compartment. Nope. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. He hadn't noticed that path before. Bernardo had once invested in a jewel store, but it lost money because someone kept robbing it. Twist, it was him. Dirty and bloody, Bernardo finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Bernardo recognized the cards. It was we capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia? The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Bernardo shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Would he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Beat Bernardo at hot potato. This was the nice part of town, but the ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests. Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling. Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato.
A chest full of old banana peels. There had to be more.
There was. Why was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. Yeah, there must be some way to play on that, Renato thought. Renato, smash! So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up at her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while. Heard a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy. Renato said, did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that. I can. And so, they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but he can talk, and he can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is, and you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. The scientists... Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? that door been opened before? So much. It was time to turn it into something he could use. Caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in? Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and... all right, I suppose I wouldn't.
She stopped, troubled. He ran on.
Renato had been searching for a way to save the rebellion. Lapino wanted to capture and interrogate Zenobia. But if he could show her proof of her father's madness, maybe she would join the rebellion. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? Hey, did you guys ever learn to swing dance? Oh, well, too late. Nothing gets your blood pumping like a bit of killing. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there? Renato reached Lapino by Farspeaker Toad, the one creature the Ravens had left alive at the observatory. Lapino seemed awfully anxious to meet him at the secret base. If he was a spy for the Empire, he'd turn around and reveal the coordinates to the Empire, jeopardizing the entire rebellion. But Renato couldn't bear to think that Lapino would commit such horrible treachery. There was still good in the Mad Rabbit. He felt sure of it. "I'll meet up with you at the base," Lapino said through the Toad. "Good thinking." Renato gave him the coordinates. "There's a shuttle here I can, borrow." Renato found Zenobia in the chart room. "I've been having awful dreams," she said. "Dead kittens and worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lost gods back? In those days, the favorite of a god could become immortal. She held herself and shivered. He wants to become an eater of souls. Well, I'm not afraid to die. Just tired of boredom. Renato said, but she didn't laugh. Silence fell as they flew towards the ruins of the city of Ubar, where the rebellion leadership was hiding. If Zenobia couldn't help them fight off her father, no one could. As they touched the ground, he could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance. They're probably looking for me, she said. You go on ahead. She had that fiery look in her eyes that he'd always loved. It was a bit odd, though. How easy she'd been to convince. It was what he'd gambled on, but he'd expected more of an argument. She'd always loved to argue. She considered it the fastest way to the truth. Maybe she'd long suspected the truth. Sometimes all it took was taking the bandages from your eyes. That must be it, he told himself. Every day he was getting better and better. Sometimes, Renata really hated inanimate objects. I need more materials, thought Renato. They caught their breath under a ruined arch. It's beautiful, she said. This was the library of Ubar, he said. Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book. She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Renata thought. To turn her to our cause. So, why do I feel something is terribly wrong? Because nothing ever goes this smoothly, is why. These things could really use a hand. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Break the ice with this wall, so to speak. Ah, the road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing. Council toads swarmed around Zenobia. Shocked she was there. Shocked she had changed sides. Then, the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So... she had betrayed him after all. Renato ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. His heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Renato knew, she was helping him bring back the old, lost gods back from their exile. Renato landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Renato felt strangely free. Trying not to think about how he had lost the war. Trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia. Blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur. I wonder what happens if I go that way. Look down, he thought. What had happened to Lupino? Had the mad rabbit fled to safety? Or was he forlornly carrying on like the few rebels Renato could see here or there? It didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once loved, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as she'd left in his. Renato had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. There was a sign. Take the goat across first. And suddenly, Zenobia was there, advancing a Lapino. So the Mad Rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lapino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Renato ran towards the witch. "Lapino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Before he could think, Renato sank his sword into the sorceress. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lapino's the traitor!" Renato had an awful, sinking feeling in his stomach. Then, he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the Mad Rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then, the sun went out. Damn it. And, just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, and he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer, pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis Stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lupino. Lupino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Slice the wings off a fly in the air. Not that he would. It's sort of mean, really. Rushed. Oh. Shy. That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more ravens. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best. So this was what it was like to die. Not nearly as much fun as they said. I should go, he thought. was a cat in this one. And something useful. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renardo. I hoped his mother wasn't watching. Renardo was... Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. Haven't you always wanted to do that? Lupino would betray him. But now Renardo knew that. What would Lupino do if he knew that Lupino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concoct some crazy scheme, wouldn't he? That used Lupino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in his face. Yeah. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first. Magical jewel. Renardo couldn't wait to find a workbench. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this. We capture Zenobia. We find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't... The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. Or I could go that way, he thought. Why was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. There must be some way to play on that, Renato thought. There was blood on this one, so it hadn't saved its owner. This chest contained a Vorpal sword. Just kidding. Vorpal swords don't exist. Well, the eyes have had it. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato. Oh, this is gonna be fun, said Lupino as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. Renato felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Peppino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Renato jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat. "Renato," she said, "are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Oh, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two," said Lapino. But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her east over the Nexus. She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lapino was right, Renato thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. "You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you?" she said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Renato saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. "Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost," yelled Lapino. "You have to catch her." Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase. What's behind door number 2? Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did. He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his. Ooh, a workbench. Did he have any jewels he hadn't tried out?
He had.
Bernardo reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lupino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia, how that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebels' secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? As they reached the ruins, Renato could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot. What if we get separated? Asked Lupino, for once thinking ahead. I'll show you a map to the base. Renato told Lupino. Renato, don't do this, said Zenobia. We were friends once. We... Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too, said Lupino. See? Renato thought. There was no way Lupino was working for the Empire. He really hated Zenobia. And then, a few moments later, they touched down. As Lupino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, Renato readied himself for the battle. Missed her. Not Zenobia. Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. had misgivings. It had been Lupino's idea to capture Zenobia. Lupino who'd guessed she'd run to the outpost. There was something wrong with the way none of Lupino's plans had gone wrong yet. It wasn't like him.
Hey, I hear Black is the new dead.
Who made all these ore chests anyway? Well, you could have quite a business doing that. Already Renato knew more than he ever had. But about what? How could you convince a firewall you're its friend? This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? They caught their breath. It's beautiful, she said, looking at the ruins. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? Hey, how do you tell if someone's far away, or just really small? The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. It was on fire. So far, so good.
I'm sorry. Was that your shield?
As they made their way to the secret rebel base, Renato felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, but suddenly the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing. The caves? You've been playing me? Renato said, and he stared at Zenobia. I'm sorry, she said, and she seemed almost embarrassed. Then everything went dark. When Renato came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat, and her shackles were gone. So was Lupino. The terrible thing is, he said, I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter? I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies, he said. The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose. Oh, never mind, she said. Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you. He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided. Even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet. The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running. But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He's decided to stop thinking for a while. Renato had a feeling that was the back door to something. But what? Renato's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Renato thought, he and Zenobia had left Sword Fu School together, taken other names and sailed off into the mists. Not this night. And not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this. Renato felt surprisingly unwounded. This thing really needed a roof. At last, he reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. Why'd you have to come back? She said, guess I'm just serving my destiny. He shrugged. You don't even know what that word means. She said, do you ever wonder if things have been different? All the time, she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Renato lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. What are you so upset about? He asked. You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to. I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then. he told her, and then he was gone. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. There would be a way to win. Renato could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis Stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone?